action. My first artifact is in regard to Nathaniel Hawthorne's solitary years. I have researched several sources, but I choose to quote from encyclopedia.com. Recent biographers has shown that this period of Hawthorne's life was less lonely than he remembered it to be. In literal truth, he did have social engagements, played cards, and went to the theater and the Lyceum. His sister Elizabeth remarked that if there was any gathering of people in town, he always went out. He liked a crowd. Hawthorne presented himself as lonely when he was anything but. Was he a hypocrite or was he delusional? We may never know. This is a song by Green Day. I wanted it played at my funeral, so I looked it up on YouTube. I love the sentimental lyrics, the laid-back vocals, and the yearning tunes, but they belie the true original intent of the song. It's a breakup song originally titled Good Riddance. So the hypocrisy is obvious. It represents itself as one thing, but it's really another. So I still want it played at my funeral, but that is the hypocrisy of my life. Which brings me to my next artifact. My great-grandmother Ruby was a Whitfield, and she married a Bynum despite the long-standing feud between their families. They were often compared to the Hatfields and McCoys, which is my real-life artifact. William Anderson Hatfield and Randolph McCoy were patriarchs of two large and complex families living along the border of West Virginia and Kentucky during the Civil War era. There was a lot of unrest. Members of these prolific families often married and changed loyalties back and forth throughout time, but there's still a question of what started the feud. According to the History Channel, most historians agree that it started over a hog. Floyd Hatfield was accused of stealing one of Randolph McCoy's hogs. Though Floyd's trial was held in McCoy territory, the judge was a Hatfield, and the outcome of the trial hinged on testimony of another Hatfield, Bill Staton. I'll show you a clip.
That's enough, Bill.
Okay.
I know most of y'all got crops to start these tendons, so I ain't gonna keep you from your task any longer than necessary.
Judge Hatfield, members of the jury, it is useful to think of the law as a muscle. Like a muscle, it can be strengthened with proper use.
Mr. Klein, the briefer you make your remarks, the better your case is gonna be received. Do you mean to call a witness?
This feud went on for 30 or 40 years, depending on sources, and resulted in the murders of at least 9 people. All in the name of who's right and who's wrong. Both sides felt they were right. However, vengeful murder is never right, so both sides were wrong. They were all hypocrites, no matter what really happened with the hog. My next artifact represents a struggle with hypocrisy in the world of The Walking Dead. Rick Grimes leads his group in a survival fight against the undead. As time passes, they become inured to violence, and they also realize that the undead are just part of their new world and that their true enemies are other survivors.
Don't kill the living.
What happened? It's buffering.
Be safe there. The military were on the front lines of this thing. They got overrun. We've all seen that. The CDC's our best choice of heroes.
Okay. So Rick went from we don't kill the dead to we don't kill the living to we killing the living. Okay. He struggled with what is right and what is wrong. Who can you trust? Is turning away of strangers begging for protection wrong, or is it essential for survival? Who are the good guys? Who are the bad? Is killing for survival morally right in a lawless world? That is a true struggle with the beast of hypocrisy. Upton Sinclair's The Jungle is a story of the real-life struggles of immigrant workers at the turn of the 20th century. The narrator, Upton Sinclair, says on page 27, "So America was a place of which lovers and young people dreamed. If one could only manage to get the price of a passage, he could count his troubles at an end. Young Jurgis Rudkus and his extended family left Lithuania to come to America. They were young and strong and strict moral and work ethics. They were secure in their beliefs of a better life. They found themselves in the Chicago district known as Packing Town. Happily, Jurgis found employment at once and did most of the adults in the family. They bought a brand new house with their collective savings and moved in. This wound up being one of the few happy moments in the story, though not without much anxiety. Then the real truth reared its ugly head. The dangers and poor working conditions inherent in meat cutting, packing, canning, as well as fertilizer production resulted in injuries, illness, shortened lives. Illness and injury commonly resulted in unpaid leave and sometimes permanent loss of employment. As for the new house, it was not new. It was just freshly painted. And the papers that Jurgis's family signed when buying it strapped them to various fees, taxes, and interest that, if not met, resulted in their home being repossessed. How did they wind up that way? Well, on page 113, Sinclair says, "Here was a population, low class and mostly foreign, hanging always on the verge of starvation and dependent for its opportunities of life upon the whim of men, every bit as brutal and unscrupulous as the old-time slave drivers. Under such circumstances, immorality was exactly as inevitable and as prevalent as it was under the system of chattel slavery. In the meat trust, the corrupt capitalists and politicians controlled the economy and paid low wages, and then swindled immigrants out of these low wages with poor quality goods and overpriced services. Because immigrants often did not understand the culture or language, they were stuck. They were not able to advance themselves in society. Those that controlled these men and women became wealthy from their labor. The hypocrisy of the American dream was exposed as the Lithuanian family discovered themselves in a place of prejudice and exploitation where only moral corruption, crime, and graft allow one to succeed rather than hard work and morality." So those are my 5 artifacts. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed.